I thought you were planning to maybe get
I
the
was planning it. And I thought, now, in case I don't get out, in case the weather's bad,
I'll have the hand.
and they showed no enthusiasm about going out, so I took the hand. And I went down, I didn't have cabbage for coleslaw. Went down and got cabbage for coleslaw.
Oh my
And
God.
each thing is a little extra. And I had baked beans, but I'd already brought in, I get those B&M and I doctored them up.
Yeah.
First I fry some bacon, and then I take the bacon out of the pan, I use the fat to cook onion in, and then, the chopped up. And then I put the beans into that, and then you put a little molasses. And
I just want to start off, Mrs. Hall, by telling you, I know I speak for everyone when I tell you how much we love you, admire you, and respect you. And I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but I just want you to know that. You're very special to us.
Peggy, I think you have rose-colored glasses on.
Oh, stop.
That's what I think.
You have really treated us like gold, like the grandmother, the third grandmother, but the best one we ever had.
Do you know when I came into the picture?
Not really. I'd like you to tell us.
It was when Carl was born. But before that, Jackie came here.
Mm-hmm.
He was having a little difficulty in school.
Mm-hmm.
And those down in St. Bridget's school,
mm-hmm.
They had very big classes. Some had 50 in them.
Exactly.
And they had the teaching nuns. And Jack seemed to have a little difficulty with reading.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I couldn't discuss, and your mother asked me if I would try to help him.
Mm-hmm.
He was then 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to come in here after school. And I didn't know what his problem was.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not had this work in remedial reading, and I've been teaching in the high school.
Mm-hmm.
But he was such a good child.
Yeah, I was going to ask, was he reluctant to do that? Did you feel like my mother had to push him?
He was always the nicest boy.
Really?
And he was, at 10 years of age, he was a man before he...
Is that right?
He was not
I
a
believe
boy.
that.
Jack was always a man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, he would sit there, and I'd give him a glass of milk and some cookies.
I was just going to say, I'm sure I
in.
got that.
And the first thing, we would do catechism.
Uh-huh.
And he was not a slouch. He was not dull. He was not slow in any way.
Right.
And he got his catechism. Then we would turn to arithmetic. And then we would turn to some geography. And then we would have maybe then some reading. And whatever it was the problem at that time, I don't know. But I would read what was on the page to him, in geography, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And, or a story he had to read. He could tell me almost verbatim what I had told him.
Really? So it wasn't a retention?
To this day, I don't know, but
How long would you work with him? About an hour?
Oh, at least about an hour.
Yeah.
Till he got his homework done.
Yeah.
He would sit that whole time with you?
Oh,
And...
yes. He sat right there.
Wow.
Oh, yes. And he was so patient. And he was maybe 9 when he started coming here. But when he was 10 was when Carl was born, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I remember. That's when I
Tell
came
us
in
all about it.
and into the picture.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there. I would have the card table there in his books. He was sitting there, and I said, Jack, your mother was in the hospital. Carl had been born, and I knew she had phlebitis. Did you know that?
Yeah, I hear that story.
And her legs were all bound up because of phlebitis.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Jack, I said, Jackie, your mother's coming home such a day. And I said, now you all have got to help her. Now remember, he was 10,
Mm-hmm.
Billy was 11, Beth was 9, Rita was 8, Tommy would have been 7, and Peter about. And I said, you all have got to help her. And he looked at me as, why? And he stood up like this. Mrs. Hall, you don't know my mother. And to this day, that's all I could ever think when I think about your mother. You don't know my mother. That was the classic statement. But he was a very obedient child, and he was a man. He was never a little boy.
Now, Billy wouldn't come over with them when you did
Well, Billy didn't need to. He didn't need to. But with Jack, I still don't know what his problem was, because he did well.
Well, it wasn't much of a problem because he did very well.
It wasn't much, but he just needed a little bit of help at the time. And he was in such a big class. What individual help could he get?
Right, and you were able to give him that one-on-one.
I was able to encourage him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But I still can't understand how I could read him a page and he could tell me what it said.
Yeah.
I just can't understand, but he was very good.
I want to hear that story. I don't remember the details, but which was the story about one of us telling you about the Santa Claus, Mommy and the looking like Santa Claus? How does that go?
That was Tommy.
That was Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy of the whole group in your family. Tommy was the actor. He was a bit of an actor.
He had a little comedian in it, didn't he?
I used to go over there. Your mother and father would sometimes join their group and then I would go over and to be there at night.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I go over, and remember, I started at the time of 31 years ago, when Carl was born. And I remember when your mother came home from the hospital, and she came in, and her poor legs were all bound up.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this beautiful, big baby.
He was a big boy.
But he was handsome, a beautiful baby.
Yeah.
And that night she went right to the stove and got the dinner.
Yeah, but they'll go on with the Tommy and...
But as Jackie said, you don't know my mother.
Right.
Well, about Tommy and Peter, when I'd go over there, I'd say, now where are Billy and... When I'd go over, before they left in the evening, where are Billy and Jackie? Well, there's so-and-so. Now, where are Beth and Rita? Maybe with friends or maybe somewhere in the house.
Right.
But I wanted them all accounted for.
Right.
Well, the next were Tommy and Peter. They slept in a bed. There were quite a few up on the 3rd floor at that time. And their bed was on the north side. The 2 of them were in that bed.
Yeah.
On the north side.
They slept in the same bed?
Yes, yes. Oh, you did, sure.
Yeah.
I guess we had to.
You had, well, we did in my day. Sure.
Nothing uncommon about that.
Even when I went to college, we had double beds. We didn't have single beds. And we didn't have the problems of today that you hear about either.
I know.
Well, anyhow, there they were in that bed, and Tommy with the big eyes, you know, and but they were very good. They weren't any trouble in any way. And but I wanted to talk to them, see if they were all right. And Tommy said, I said, your mother and father have gone to a party tonight. They said yes. And Tommy said, with those big eyes, Mrs. Hall, you should have seen my mother. And I said, why? Oh, she had on a red dress, and she looked just like Santa Claus. And the eyes were just popping.
Oh, God.
Oh, it was so funny.
I bet.
But he was really a bit of an actor.
Yeah.
And he was the one who was outgoing, and the one who would do the talking. Beth and Rita were very shy.
Yeah.
Tell the story of them on the curb out there.
Who's that? Tommy and Peter?
They got here.
Beth and Rita.
Beth and Rita. They moved here 37 years ago I think it was November.
Yeah, just after Peter or just
Before. Before.
Peter was born that
Tommy
April.
was the baby when
Okay.
they came here. Now that gives you the ages of Beth and Rita.
Right.
Oh, okay.
You know, they were like 2 and 3.
Right.
Something like that.
Little girls, yeah.
And I didn't know them, and of course, I was busy at that time. I was in school at that time.
Were you?
Yeah, and so we didn't really get acquainted, and I went out on a Saturday morning to walk down the street, and there was snow. We had a light snowfall, maybe 3 inches, and there were Beth and Rita in their snowsuits, sitting out on the sidewalk in front of the house. And I went over to speak to these little girls, and look, this is it. That was my response.
Not even a head up to look and see who you
They
were?
were both very shy.
I believe
And
that.
you see, they hadn't met me.
Mm-hmm.
You can't blame them. But here they were. That's Beth and Rita.
That's funny.
You know?
That's cute.
But Tommy was the one. He would talk. He
Yeah.
always did.
I could
was a
see
talker.
him being a chatterbox.
And the entertainer, too.
Tell us a little about the younger half of the family, you know, like the Kitty, Carl, Jimmy, and Richie generation. What do you have a funny or a fond remembrance of
Yes.
one of those characters?
You see, it was lovely in your family, the way they arranged things, your father and mother. They had 2 nice boys, 2 nice girls, and then they had 2 boys. Well, then they had 3 girls. You know, it worked very well.
Right.
You were such companions
Right.
for each other. It really worked beautifully.
It did.
And of course, in your group, Therese was the little girl. Oh, she was so sweet.
Yeah.
I called her the child of Mary's soul. She was so beautiful
Uh-huh.
and so sweet. And she always has been that same person. And I can remember you people so well. I remember you, and I can remember you the first time I ever saw you.
Newborn? Yeah.
Yeah, in a crib by the window over here. But you were so quiet. We didn't see much of you. You
Yeah.
were sleeping a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You weren't as active as your daughter.
Were you very much the babysitter during the later
Yeah, oh,
kids?
yes.
I mean, were you coming over and helping Mom clean and really helping when you had more free time?
It wasn't as much cleaning as it was like making beds and babysitting.
Right.
Yeah.
You watching so she could do that kind of thing?
So anyway, then there were the 3 boys. Well, as you know, Carl, he was the most beautiful little boy. When he was 3 years old, he was the most handsome child. And he was so nice. He's the same.
Lovable guy, right?
He's the same child.
Uh-huh.
Jackie was always a man.
Yeah.
And but Carl is, all I see when I look at him, I don't see him.
The
I
big
see
man.
that little boy.
Yeah.
He was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And he was so good.
Uh-huh.
And then the next one was Jimmy, and then Richard. And Jimmy was a rather quiet child. He's a handsome boy.
Yeah.
I think.
He is.
I used to think, and I can tell you about Peter too.
Yeah. Oh, you have time. He's
I have all morning. About Jimmy, Jimmy was very quiet, and I didn't see much of him, but I think he's a lovely boy. Well, anyway, Richard was cute, and he used to play with the Perot boy.
Right.
behind.
I'll be there.
Yeah, Albie. Well, he had to wear glasses. He had an eye problem. He had to wear glasses. And, your poor mother, finding those glasses.
Every day.
When you were so little.
Yeah.
And-
He was wearing them since he was 2 or 3, so I mean,
And where are they?
every
God.
day.
And she couldn't try to keep them on him. And one day he came in, no glasses. And your mother said, Richard, where are your glasses? Albie threw them down the drain.
Oh, God.
The sewer.
That's that story.
I remember that too, Mrs. Hall. I wasn't too.
But I mean, your family had such, they weren't big catastrophes, but in those days, money was pretty, people were earning every cent they got, and they had a
and
big
it was all
family.
going
and
out.
Always some little extra like that.
Do you remember it being chaotic? Do you remember hearing, you know, was it difficult to live next door to such a big crowd?
Oh no.
No?
Oh no.
You won.
And before you, we had the Grenfell family there,
Mm-hmm.
and there were 10 children in that family, and they were very, very good.
Mm.
Well, I don't remember, hearing that there was a big family that lived there before us.
Wow.
And they were good children, and you never heard any noise, and you never heard any crying.
Mm-hmm.
But one day, but very often their mother would leave the younger ones in charge of the second girl. The first one, the second was Anne, and for instance, if the mother went out for a few hours, she'd leave Anne in charge.
Mm-hmm.
I heard this terrible screaming over there, and I went over. I thought the child had been caught in something.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what had happened. And I went over to see, and Anne was in charge. And I said, well, what's happened over here? And she said, well, I gave him a good spanking.
There she goes. That's the way to take care of things.
But I never heard any noise in your house.
Really?
Never.
Boy, sometimes it seemed like it got pretty loud from inside there, and I know my mother was always concerned about what would...
Never any fighting.
No, that's good to know. Let me just take a break here. Do you have to sneak out?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
What time is it?
Is that the right time, Mrs. Hall?
It should be.
Okay. Did you want to run with me?
to play arena, but I've enjoyed listening to this, and I'm sure the rest is going to be just
Yeah, we'll
nice.
go another few minutes. I'll switch places with
Okay,
Kitty so
Mrs.
we
Hall,
can
I'll
keep
see you
talking.
soon.
Okay.
So long. Keep talking.
Yeah.
Oh,
That sounds great.
It does. This will be great to have for the record, like I say. You have a birthday coming up?
Yeah.
Either this month?
yes. But I'm not celebrating.
No.
My cousin is coming from Ireland, I think.
Yeah, you were talking to her this morning?
Yesterday she called.
Mhm.
She has a daughter at home. The daughter lives in Vienna most of the time. But the daughter's staying with her till August, and if she would come now, before the daughter leaves,
Right.
and she has wanted to see the relatives here, so she's coming to Toronto. If there's a cheap rate from Belfast to Toronto,
Okay.
she would come to Toronto at the end of May,
Uh-huh.
and she would go from there by bus to my niece in Warren, Pennsylvania, and then my niece would bring her here.
Oh, wouldn't that be
And you
nice?
see, she's the one who had your mother and me for
I was just going to ask.
Yes, that's the one.
The same woman.
So she's
Well, how old exactly are you going to be? 94?
94.
94.
Uh-huh, 94.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
You really are
Yeah.
something.
Well, anyhow, I look forward to this.
Mhm.
And you see, when they come, they're no trouble to me because they all cook and we
Yeah.
know each other.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
That'll make it a lot
it's like
easier
when
on
you go home to your mother. But I don't know this gal very much. She was the bride, my nephew's wife. She's
Yeah.
very nice, but she's from Colorado, and I'm not used to her, and she's not used to me.
Exactly, and like you said, what
And
to
she's still
cook and how to
studying.
eat.
She's still studying.
Right.
She has her, her father's a dentist out in Boulder, Colorado. And she had her own apartment, and she was going to college out there.
Mhm.
Even though she's not young, she's 30-ish.
Mhm.
And she transferred credits up to Framingham, Mass.
Mhm.
They were then living in Framingham, and when they were married, and she's now taking 3 courses, and after the baby's born in July, she'd still have 2 more courses
Oh, boy.
before she gets her degree.
Sounds like a
But I
good
admire her pluck.
Yeah.
So when she was here, I didn't see her Saturday afternoon. She was upstairs.
Reading and
Yeah.
studying?
Mhm.
Wow.
She was upstairs studying, and it's very hard a degree in administration.
Is that what she said?
Business administration.
Uh-huh.
And she studied macroeconomics. Well, I had calculus, and I didn't like it. It's harder than calculus.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the story there.
Yeah.
So, but this cousin will come. I said I want no celebration on my birthday. We'll celebrate when she gets here.
Oh, that sounds good. We can send you a card though if we want to anytime, right?
You just come and see me when you come.
Yeah, that's what we like doing anyhow.
Yeah. Well, Peggy, how are things going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. So far so good, yeah. It was just a wonderful week here with Father Frank and the church, and I've been down since Tuesday just to do Holy Week here, you know, and very emotionally charging, very physically draining, and really by Easter Sunday I had to let it all out, you know. It seemed like the tears were streaming down my face during the masses, but that
Your mother
was
said it was fun. It was
virtually
beautiful Easter
overflow.
service.
Yeah.
But that man's unusual.
He's, there's not an adjective for that man.
You
He's
won't
just
find a man, you won't find a priest like that no matter what, or I mean any
close
minister,
approximation, you know what I mean? I mean, we live in Schenectady, there's a church, there's probably 5 or 6 churches in a 2-mile radius near us, and we bounce around just trying to find the inspiration and spirit that he can give, and I think we've come close. We found a pastor who can.
Well, I just hope
us.
they'll never move him out of Westbury because
That's it, everybody.
He is, but they do that, you know, in among the clergy. If there's a church that needs.
Yeah, I had asked him because he tells a story about how when they moved him from Rocky Point, it was really a hard blow for him. He tells how he had made many friends and was so comfortable there, and when they called him for St. Bridget's, it was a real struggle for him, and he had to, like he put it, say yes.
What I don't understand, I've heard him many times now, and I've talked to him too, how he can extend himself to take care of everybody. Now, for example, you weren't here for the night that they had the supper for your mother, you know, the buffet supper on her birthday.
Right.
Her birthday supper. You didn't get back to that
No.
because you were coming for the baptism.
Right.
And how it was a very lovely buffet meal at Peggy at Kitty's.
Right.
And he arrives at 7:30. Now remember, it was a Saturday night, and he arrived, and to put himself out is what I mean.
He did that this weekend too. We went to the sunrise mass, and at the end he asked Paul for a ride back. It was nearing 8 o'clock. He told us he had to do the 9 o'clock mass, but he wanted to go out to breakfast with us. So he was like, "Why don't you just drop me off? I'll take my car so I don't have to rush you people through."
But remember, this is what I can't understand. You're just one family.
I know it, and all that, and then he stopped by again at the Westbury Manor where we were having dinner.
Yeah, but you're just one family. Look at the crowd he looks after.
I know.
And what he did at Christmas time, I thought was so nice. I've had several communications from him, and he and I rode back from the wedding, you know,
Carl's
together.
right.
And we talked. I guess he thought he was going to ride home with an old lady.
He didn't know what he was in
And
for,
we
huh?
talked all the way.
I bet.
And we covered everything.
I know.
Religion and politics.
You're an interesting woman to talk to.
And the history of Westbury and all the rest of it. No, but anyhow, he is a very, very exceptional man.
He is. He's meant a lot to me. He's really brought a lot of people closer to God just by knowing him.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And I can easily see how he would get converts for the church just because of him.
Exactly. I know it.
In our day here in Westbury, there were priests who, they were there on the altar.
Right. And that was about all you saw of him, right?
But what I was going to tell you, at Christmas time, you know, he was busy then too. And one thing that I noticed after he came here, he put up signs outside the church, "Come home for Christmas." And I thought that was so nice.
That's very touching.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
And this Christmas, he went around to every shut-in with a poinsettia.
Oh, how
Now,
sweet.
I think that's wonderful.
It is.
Now, in our church, yesterday, that is chrysanthemums in there, they are from our church.
Mhm.
After the service, different, the shut-ins of the older people got these. They were all distributed.
Oh, nice.
That Father Frank didn't bring them because they sent somebody.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, I mean, you got the flower, but I'm
he
sure.
has a personal touch.
Oh, without a
Oh,
doubt.
I think he is an exceptional person.
You know it, so do I.
But he certainly was good to you people
Uh-huh.
when you needed him.
He was there.
Mhm,
I really
mhm.
know it.
Yeah.
Let's get back to our family for a little bit. You talked about going to Carl's wedding. How many of our weddings have you been able to go to? Did you go to Jack's?
Oh, yes.
He was the
Oh, yes.
first one.
I was at, Jack was the first one, Rita was the second one,
Mm-hmm.
that was here in Westbury.
Right.
And then I was at Peter's
Mm-hmm.
and Kitty's.
Did you go to mine? Mine was the year after
Yeah,
Rita's.
I was at yours too, down
Uh-huh.
there.
At
Yours
the
was-
tavern?
Yeah, yours was
Mhm.
here. That's where I met Mrs. Kranz and Margaret, at the tavern.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That was the first time you
Yeah,
met them? Mm-hmm.
That's the first time I had met them. Oh,
Mhm.
I love that, Mrs. Kranz.
Wasn't she a wonderful
Yeah.
person?
Mhm.
Very,
Yeah.
I think, a closer friend to my mother than Margaret sometimes.
Margaret is Margaret. But you take these people that have a lot of, that are gifted.
Mhm.
She's gifted in her music. They're different.
Right. And sometimes they have in creativity what they lack in personality sometimes.
Well, now they're all wrapped up in that,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Whereas we who aren't so smart.
Just have a lot of,
Just down there. No, but I was at Jack's and at Rita's and at yours because they were all kind of more.
within,
And then Peter's and Kitty's.
mhm.
And the one that I missed was, I missed two. I missed Beth's.
Right.
Willard wasn't well at that time. I missed, and I wouldn't, I think that was it, or it was right after his funeral, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago.
Right. Beth got married in 90,
Mhm.
right after Kitty.
Yeah. Oh,
And it was,
yeah, well, I didn't
oh,
feel like
excuse me, right
going then.
before. Yeah, that was in
And-
Dallas. That would have
Yeah,
been a
and
big
the-
trip.
And the one in,
Chicago. It was
Billy's.
Billy's.
I missed Billy's. How long ago was that?
He got married in 87.
You know, you see, at that time, Willard wasn't very well.
Yeah.
He had that congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
He had that for 3 years. And when he had that, I tried not to be out of the house much.
Yeah.
I would be out at a meeting,
to shop
I'd be
and-
out maybe for 2 hours,
Yeah.
but not for, I wouldn't be out for long.
Yeah,
No,
well,
I
we're
don't.
speaking of weddings and we're speaking of Mr. Hall. Tell us how you met him.
Oh, how I met him. That was really something. I was 3 years old.
3?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Almost 4, but I was 3 years old. My father was taking charge of an estate up in Southfields, New York. See, he managed big estates.
Mhm.
That was really the kind of work he got. He wanted the farm life, outdoor life,
Mhm.
and he was not a city man.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Southfields. I was not 4 years old, and Willard was a big boy then. He was 7.
Oh.
He was big.
Yeah.
But we went to the same little 2-room schoolhouse
Uh-huh. And
In-
how many kids?
in the whole school.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe 70. In the
Oh,
whole
wow,
school.
that's more than
In
I
a
thought.
2-room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
And anyway, the family, it was a small town,
Uh-huh.
and we went to the same little Sunday school,
Uh-huh.
and there was only one church in the town, the Methodist.
Uh-huh.
And we got to know, the families got to know each other, you know, and I loved his mother and father,
Yeah.
and, well, then we lived in Southfields, till I was about 12, and our folks in Toronto, see, my people came to the United States via Canada from my father and mother didn't know each other in Ireland, even though they came from nearby adjoining counties. You know, they didn't travel far apart in those days.
Right.
Well, anyway, each one came to Toronto, where my mother's aunts lived, and met at the home of one of my mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he came over to the United States, and he'd been over in Ohio. He liked the United States better than he liked Canada, and so they came to New York, and so then he didn't like city life, even though he had gotten a job in New York. I was born in New York City.
Oh, were you?
And in Yorkville. And so, in New York, well,
And that was
so
in
we went to
1899, right?
1899. So we went to Southfields in 1902.
Mm-hmm.
1903. And then about 1912, his folks in Canada begged him to come back to Canada, his relatives.
Mm-hmm.
So we went for 2 years.
You did?
But he didn't like it. In
No.
fact, we came to the United States.
Hang on a second. I'll get it. It's probably for me. Yes? Okay, I'll be over in 5 minutes. Okay. Sorry. We're taking my girlfriend's in town with her 2 little boys.
Oh, good.
And we're going to the Statue of Liberty today.
Well, my folks didn't come that way. But but anyway, we came back.
Mm-hmm.
And my father got this job in East Norwich.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as Willard and I were concerned, our paths separated, you see, after we went to Canada.
Right, you were 12, right?
But I'd go back there to visit. And he went off to the war in 1918, and I went off I was in college.
Uh-huh.
So we were separated. It was always a case of separating and meeting again.
Uh-huh.
And then I took care of my mother after my father died. He was in the fire department in New York, and we had a wonderful friendship. It was built on friendship.
Uh-huh, that's important.
It was not built on a romance.
Yeah.
It was built on, and it was a beautiful friendship.
And you married him in your 20s?
No.
No?
No, he was in the fire department in New York. And when I started teaching, teachers couldn't marry.
Is
You
that
weren't
right?
allowed to marry.
Really?
Oh, no, that's one thing that kept me from marrying early.
Wow.
When in 1930, I went to teach in New York City. At that time, teachers here did not dare.
Oh, I never knew.
Oh,
that.
no.
I mean, I knew the nuns couldn't marry, of course, but I didn't know the lay teachers.
Women teachers wouldn't get jobs. They're afraid you'd get pregnant.
Oh, of course. Wow.
Yeah, they didn't want it. The Board of Education didn't want to change it.
So when did your wedding?
It's 1942.
42.
We had 49 good years.
Wow.
Almost 50.
What was your wedding date?
October 22, 1942.
Oh, wow.
But he had then retired from the fire department. See, he was there working shifts, 8 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and living in Brooklyn. He lived with his brother in Brooklyn. So anyway, it was a long friendship.
Yeah, now he was 48 at the time you got married?
I was 43. He would have been 47.
47.
Mm-hmm.
So you both, do you believe he waited for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes, he said they had introduced different people to it. One time, I was before we were married. I always think about this because we were in New York, and I was with a group of college friends, and we were to meet him at a certain spot, and it was in a church on Fifth Avenue. There was something going on. I can't remember what it was, but we were to meet there. And I said, "Have you seen anybody from the group?" He said, "No, I see only you."
Oh, that's sweet. Well, I wish I could continue this. I could talk to you all day, but they are waiting for me.
You come back another time.
Can I? I would love to.
Mhm.
I'm glad I got to
Yeah.
talk to you,
Yes.
Mrs. Hall. I
Bye.
love you.
Bye, dear.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and I think
Maybe.
you, and about Paul, has he gone back?
Yes, he did have to run back today because,
Tell him I was probably on the telephone.
yeah, I know he wanted to catch you a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
But
Well, tell him I'm sorry.
What the
I
hell?
wanted her to wake up, but the only thing that would wake her up was the kiss of a prince. And the prince saw her, and he knew she was beautiful, and he gave her a kiss. And she woke up, and they hugged, and they kissed, and they lived happily ever after. And that was the end of the dwarfs. Who's that? Who's that?
Doggy.
Doggy. Say bye, Paul. Bye, Paul. Say bye, Paul.
Bye.
Ouch. Left it on my tongue. Goodbye, Paul.
Bye, Peggy.
See you later.
See ya. Bye, Megan.
Okay, I gotta take Megan's dress off. We're gonna take a nappy. Is your diaper wet?
Yep.
Uh-oh, we better take that off too. Go upstairs and lay down. I'm gonna lay down too. I'm tired. Is it wet?
Yep.
Let me see. Okay. We're back at Mrs. Hall's house, and she's gonna tell us a few stories, a few of her favorite stories. Luckily, she's written some down so she doesn't forget the good ones she wants to tell. And anything you want to start with, Mrs. Hall, because we haven't heard
All right.
a lot of your good ones.
Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
No, it's not so much special incidents.
Uh-huh.
First of all,
Megan,
what I
Mom,
put down
my
as number one
favorite.
on my list that I want to say today. I consider your family very wealthy. I often say to your mother, you're a millionaire and I'll bet you don't know it.
Yeah.
I said, when I think of the wonderful family that you had, and they all have done so well, they've all have been achievers, they've all been workers, and they've accomplished so much in these 40-some years.
Uh-huh.
That's the way I always start my story. And I've told her that so many times, and she's very modest about it all. But I really think you have come from a very wealthy family. When you think of what wealth is, a good home, good parents, love, and in all of this, as you have grown older, you have made good, solid marriages.
Mm-hmm.
They look like the kind that will last. And the nice part about it is, I think that they all love each other and they all want to be together.
Mm-hmm.
That is what has impressed me through the years. Now, when you first came here, and when I speak about wealth and having things, I couldn't understand how the children of your family, this is almost 38 years ago now, Billy would have been almost 5. He would have been 5 at that time
Mm-hmm.
when you came here. He would be 43 in September. I think
That's right.
Well, anyway, your children had tricycles. The family of Grenfelds, there were 10 in them, lovely, lovely children, and well-behaved and nice. Those poor kids never had tricycles. And you had tricycles, and I couldn't understand it. It seemed like that you had a great advantage there. And then when Billy and Jack were little fellows, they went to Washington to visit, I think, your Aunt Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was in Washington.
Right.
And they were flown home. When, in those days, that was unheard of.
I bet.
You'd come in an automobile, or you'd come on a train, but they were flown home. And I thought, I thought that was lovely. And then when Billy went off to college, he went in an automobile.
Mm-hmm.
And Catherine Good helped provide that automobile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in those days, not many had cars to go to college.
Really?
It just wasn't done. And it reminded me of when I went to college. I got a train from, we lived in East Norwich then, a train from Syosset to New York,
Mm-hmm.
and then changed and waited over at Grand Central for a train to Albany. It took me all day to get there.
I remember you
But I
telling
went
me.
by train and carried a little suitcase in what I could carry.
Right.
And I waited for my clothes and things to come in by express.
Wow.
That went with our train ticket. Your
Uh-huh.
could go by express. So I went about 3 days after I got there. The trunk arrived.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a VCR. I didn't have a hi-fi. I did that. Remember, that was 1916.
Right.
And
It
when
wasn't.
I think of today, and Billy went off to college in his day,
And all he
quite a
took
while
with
ago,
him.
and he had an automobile, I thought that was pretty wonderful. So you see, when I talk about wealth, I'm still talking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, things that I remember about your house, there are changes in it now, things that I miss very much. I miss the kitchen table. You had a long table, and you had long benches on either side, and you all sat there in
Yeah.
the kitchen.
Yeah.
And your family, there weren't nothing. Your mother always add ever happened to be playing with you.
Mm-hmm.
One noon I came, must have been like a vacation time. You all were home, and your father came in. You see, he came home for his meals, for
Right.
his lunches. He walked in and he looked at the table, and it was really funny. He looked at it, and it wasn't a place for him to eat a meal. I don't know where he ate his, but anyway, the one boy whom I remember sitting at that table was little Brian Gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
Remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Then they used to have the Clintons,
Uh-huh.
and then you had the Youngs from the corner over there.
Right.
And then the Butlers.
The Butlers.
And your father never knew who was going to be there.
I'm sure.
And but it was very nice among the friends of the family. If your mother wanted to go somewhere, some of her friends would take some of her children, and if they were going away, she'd
She'd do
take
the
some of
same,
theirs.
right.
But they always had that table crowded with children.
I miss that table too,
Oh,
Mrs.
yeah,
Hall.
I missed that table. And one day, I used to go over there, it was after Carl was born. I went over, and I used to help in the mornings. I'd make beds. And I'd go over about 10 o'clock in the morning. By that time, your mother would have the first floor in apple pie order. Some had gone to school, but everything was always in order by 10 o'clock on the first floor. Well, I looked one morning, I got over there early, and you hadn't gone to school. And here were all these little brown bags lined up, ready for the lunches. And, oh, they looked so cute on the
Yeah.
table. I often wish that I had had a picture of those lunches on that table.
Yeah, you should have saw when the sandwiches were in the making too. You know, just both sides of bread, and she really had it down to a system.
And I remember at that time, I was over there helping your father when Carl was born.
Mm-hmm.
He was a beautiful baby and very large.
Yeah, he was
And
the
your
big
mother
one.
came home. I think I've already told you the story, how I had said to Jackie that now you people will have to help your mother.
Yeah.
And he would say, why? She never thought she needed help. And I said, well, she doesn't feel very well. Her legs were all bound up. She had phlebitis, and her legs were all bound up. She carried that beautiful big boy in, and that night she prepared the dinner.
Unbelievable, that lady.
But Jackie had said to me, Mrs. Hall, you don't know my mother.
That's right.
He proved it there.
Exactly.
So that was another thing. And Jack was such a cute boy. He was lovely. And one time, he when he was having his lessons here, he came and he brought me a package, and in it was that cross that's up there.
Wow.
There had been a bazaar over at the Catholic church, or at the school, and he found that for me.
Oh.
And he looked so quizzical about the whole thing. It's like, when you buy something for somebody, I wonder if she'll like it.
Yeah.
You know. Well, there it is.
that.
He'll be 42 in September, this month, and it's been here 32 years in that spot.
Oh.
That's the story of
I
the
never
cross.
knew that.
You didn't know that?
No.
Mhm. Well, then, something I remember also is when Father Forker used to come, and he had masses in the yard, and it was very, very nice. Do you
In our
remember?
backyard? No,
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, yes.
Maybe one. Do you remember? I can remember.
I remember one in particular because I was there.
Yeah?
And, you know, and Father Forker came, and he had the mass in the
Wow.
backyard. Mhm. Now, Jackie was married at the time. I remember seeing Ellen there.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. See, I miss things like that as the years go by.
Yeah.
Let me see. Another thing I remember, the boys belonged to the Little League, and, you know, they had a championship year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your mother, I can't remember your father going. I guess he did. Well, maybe he stayed home. Had to mind the ones that were
Right.
home. But your mother would go, busy as she would, she would get to those Little League
Yeah.
games.
Unbelievable.
Did you ever hear about the time that Richard was left over at the amusement park?
Yeah, we were there, but I'd like to hear you tell the story for the record, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the name of the amusement?
That was Palisades Amusement Park.
Uh-huh. Well, whenever your mother went anywhere, she had not only her own children, but everybody else's.
Right.
And they got to the, they were in the amusement park, and she had gathered up her crowd, she thought. And I don't know how far she was on the way home from there.
I think we were like halfway, you know, not close enough to go right back.
And suddenly, where is Richard?
Yeah.
Richard was back in the amusement park.
He was not, yeah, maybe 3 years old at the time, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I remember. And somebody said, "Where's Richard?" And Richard was very peaceful and kept very, but in those days, this couldn't have happened. Things don't like that don't happen
No.
today. You'd be kidnapped instead.
Oh, really? Yeah, we had no fear that we wouldn't, you know, my mother called the park, and luckily he was right, you know, with the security at that time, and, you know, there was no doubt in our mind that we'd get him back if we went back for him,
I
but
know.
like you said, these days, it's a
no.
big
It's
fear.
so different. Well, then, about Rita, she fell out of the car one time.
Yeah.
And they were on Clinton Road.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and Rita fell out. And I think Beth, yeah, we lost Rita.
Oops.
But in your family, everything turned out all right.
Usually it did, yeah.
It always, with all the children, and, you know, today, if you took somebody else's children with you, you feel very, very responsible.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing ever happened. Everybody got home safely,
Right.
and everything was all right. But I think we're living in a different age.
We are.
Don't you think we are?
Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah, well then, I wrote down about, let's see, about your mother. She can always include everybody and everything. I don't know how she does it.
Mhm.
Jeff, don't know how she does it.
Yeah, well, I don't think we figured it out either.
And your father is so relaxed. What a contrast But if two were like that, two dynamos, what would
Exactly.
they'd clash.
Right.
It's good to keep so calm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you remember much, Mrs. Hall, about our grandparents, my mother's parents coming over and helping my
yes.
mother out?
Oh,
Like on
always.
Friday and...
That was my very earliest recollection. Your mother, your grandparents used to ride over here just about every day, especially down to Carl. That's when I got into the act.
Right.
And your grandmother still came after Carl was born.
Mhm.
They still came, but they knew I was there, so they didn't have to.
Right.
And also, they were getting a little bit older too.
Yeah.
And but they came to help, and your grandmother was wonderful.
I remember seeing her
she was
sometimes
a
when
pretty
I come
little
home
woman.
from school.
Pretty
Yeah.
little, as I recall her.
Uh-huh.
But she's been gone a long time.
Yeah.
And
Early 70s.
I couldn't remember just the time when she
It was right around Jack's graduation, somewhere like 72, 73, I think.
And I remember Aunt Catherine, Aunt Teresa coming. She used to come here a great deal.
Mhm.
And when I first saw her, of course that's a long time ago, 30, almost 38 years, she wore the
Habit.
the nurse's habit.
Mhm.
And I think of her